Okay, guys, so today we're playing The Wolf Among Us in 2025. One of the best story adventures in all of video game history. I mean, the gameplay itself is not really much because it's a point and click game. Remember Telltale Games? Every single game they made was in that style where it was really more of an interactive story than an actual game in of itself. I mean, it was a game technically, but not really in practice. Like, you can be the someone who's not really interested in video games at all, but get into games like this because all you really have to do, I mean, you have like certain things where you have to find items in order to progress through the story, but it's mostly just you have a dialogue tree and you have different choices to make, and you can only, you have a certain amount of time to make those choices, and they quote unquote have an effect on the outcome of the story, which isn't necessarily true. Most of the important things that happen in the game will happen regardless of your input, regardless of your choice, except for the very end of the game. But even then, it is very linear. But that's not to say that Wolf Among Us is a bad game or something that's not worth playing. I'm just saying, like, if you're into like gameplay and really getting into games and learning mechanics and everything, then you're obviously not going to be interested in that. But if you're interested in a good story, especially a murder mystery detective kind of vibe, then you will love The Wolf Among Us if you've never played it before. And graphically, it is aged remarkably well. I mean, it came out in 2013, so that's 12 years ago. I think the game still looks amazing for a 12-year-old game, but a lot of that has to do with the cell shading techniques that they use, which every time a game does that, it ages a lot better than if they go for like a more realistic presentation style. There's a game called 13 that was released back in 2003. It was kind of like a spy FPS game that had a single player and a multiplayer, and despite it coming out 22 years ago, it still looks great because of the cell shading. Same thing with the Borderlands titles as well. Yeah, this is no exception to that. It looks beautiful, and despite its cartoonish presentation, it is very serious and has a very gritty story and just overall, like, the tone of the game. Yeah, it's pretty brutal. It's crazy, and I never really cared for the Fable comics or anything like that, but I was still able to get into this game pretty easily. I started off playing the Walking Dead Telltale game, and then played this pretty much right after that. Because I heard of The Wolf Among Us because it was the same people that made The Walking Dead, so I'm like, oh shit, I gotta try this out. And I ended up loving it, if not as much, probably a little bit more, honestly, than the Telltale Walking Dead game. And I was a huge Walking Dead fan at the time. I couldn't get enough of Lee and Clementine. Didn't matter. This was my shit. I think this is honestly one of the best Telltale games. Aside from Batman, oh, it's really close. Which one's my favorite? It really is a tough decision. And now, of course, there's Wolf Among Us 2 that has been announced, but we haven't really gotten any updates, and I have a sinking feeling that we're probably never actually going to get Wolf Among Us 2, because it seems like the new Telltale Games is going through a lot of financial troubles, and their resources seem to be very limited. Like, in order to be able to make this game what it needs to be, I don't think, even if it does come out, it probably won't deliver. So, yeah, it's tough. It's really tough when you think about the potential that they could have done with a sequel, and that, technically the sequel's not canceled, but I don't know. I have a bad feeling about it. I think a lot of people agree with me on that. But if you've never played The Wolf Among Us before, if you've never experienced it, it really is one of the best stories in, like, all of gaming. Bigby Wolf is such an iconic character, and all the crazy shit he does in that game is just so memorable and just awesome, like, for lack of a better word, that, yeah, it's easy for me to recommend anyone play it. And even if you're someone who played it before, play it again. Just do it. You won't regret it.